David Tulis.
As Tropical Storm Irma bears up toward Tennessee, we consider the great disaster it has wrought as a hurricane in Florida. And today on 9/11, we are noting another disaster, that of human hands, that occurred 16 years ago in New York, in Manhattan, and also at the Pentagram, the military installation in 5 stars in the Pentacle Formation near Washington. That was also the object of what we're to understand in the official story was a terrorist attack 16 years ago today. Now, I view 9/11 as a government success story. It is a story of successful government. It is that of the state at its very best. Now, the analysis that there are many analyses about this, and the body of doubt, the body of skeptical literature is, of course, growing. In the first 2 years after 9/11, there were hardly any scientific studies that questioned the established thesis from NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology or standards. And but since then, there has been a growing body of official literature raising questions about the question. And the question is, how can 2 jets bring down 3 steel-framed towers with and it be all just hunky-dory and all just fine? We're being told things about what happened on that day, the loss of nearly 3,000 lives, 2,700 lives, more or less, people killed in that so-called attack. And one line of analysis says, well, the government just didn't do enough to protect the people. The civilians in those buildings did not do enough to protect the Pentagon, and it was a series of blunders. Well, maybe, and I'm sure things did not go right according to the people who planned it. There were some exposures that have come into view that some people cringe over, and yet it is unlikely that anybody will be brought to account, except perhaps from the historians who will finally, looking back through the maze of time, the mist of time, they will look back and say, well, clearly it was a combination event. And the analysis, the explanation of terrorist hijackers being the cause of the whole will be clearly put in the paragraph of pretext, right? The public story, the official narrative, what we came to believe as Muslim terrorism bringing about the demolition of these 3 towers, and justifying, of course, a 16-year-long war that has remained a failure in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and also in other countries. We have military operations. The federal, not we, but they have federal military operations in about 80 countries. Many of them are active, and the enemy is said to be Islamic fundamentalist terrorists. Now, there are Muslims who want to injure Americans and who want to do damage. We know that there are terrorists out there. They are working in a religious framework, in a religious battle, and the religion has a goal of making people fear them. If they can make people afraid, then they have won. That is their victory, is to make the enemy, whether it's the secular West or a particular national government in India or Pakistan or the Philippines, make these governments tremble in their boots in fear, and give evidence of that fear, right? By having rising police states. Then they have succeeded. They have succeeded. It is a religious enterprise. It is not a criminal enterprise. It is not a military. It is neither criminal nor military. It cannot be defeated by either of those instruments. It is a religious warfare, and the goal is to instill fear. Fear is the god that the terrorist wants you to bow upon or to bow before. That is his goal, is to have you, through your representatives, to bow before it. It being fear, And the proof of this obeisance is the rise of fear and all the instrumentalities of those people who live not in confidence and courage, but in fear. And that, of course, is the security state. And 9/11 brought to us the American security state as it had been dreamed of for decades before. Efforts to have total control of banking, snooping authority, unbelieved of, could not have come about prior to 9/11. So 9/11 is a successful state enterprise. It is a state enterprise. And the question we have today here on the David Tulis program at Nooga Radio is, if the government that is so successful in this enterprise, that is to say, of demolishing these buildings by explosives or other means, if it is so successful in doing that, who are we to doubt its goodwill, its benefit, its powers in other areas that are closer to home, right? Closer to local economy, closer to Chattanooga, to Hamilton County, to Tennessee. If the government that can bring off 9/11 and have no one pay the price for it, because it is a crime. 9/11 is a crime, not perhaps of the kind you think. If the government can bring that off so successfully, why should we doubt its authenticity, its power, its reserves, right? Its capacity to solve any problem that it deems to solve. If it needed to have an explosive event like that, if it needed a Pearl Harbor to accomplish state goals of increasing control over the economy and increasing control and militarization of policing, how can we doubt its capacity to do other good things, right? Other good things such as maintaining care of your old dad on Social Security, maintaining a fabulous welfare system through Medicare and Medicaid. Do we not doubt its goodwill? If those good things can be accomplished, food for hungry moms, right? The WIC program, all of those are suggestive of the national government's great kindness and great benefit and great goodness. Who would doubt that the government cares for the people if it can do those things? If it can allow abortion, if we can allow the destruction of 55 million children and have rise with the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, we have rise of the superior supremacy. We have judicial supremacy, right? The superiority of the judiciary over the people. We are just going to be better off. Who are we to doubt the government that can bring us all these good things? It can bring us abortion. It can bring us, in 2015, the redefinition of marriage. If it can turn marriage on its head, who's to say that it's not doing the right thing in bringing 9/11 with its upside-down narrative, right? The upside-down narrative, of course, is the one we're supposed to believe. The right-side-up narrative is the one that I hope maybe we can delve into just briefly today as we celebrate 9/11 as a state success story that should give us confidence, increasing confidence in national economy, in national systems, and doubt. We should have doubt as we consider the strengths of 9/11, the visual evidences of 9/11. We should have doubt about anyone who questions the state's interest, the state's claims upon the economy, the state's authority, the state's goodwill. Even though people were killed in 9/11 who probably shouldn't have been killed, it doesn't really matter in the larger context, right? The larger context is we have affected state policy by this event, and we're not going to give up anything that we've obtained. And so the loss of life, so-called innocent life, is really, you could say that from the government's perspective, it's not really innocent at all. Those people were there, they were there to make money. They were there to make a profit off of us, off the system that we've created. And so if some people had to die to save that system and to maintain its strength, well, we're not going to worry about the details. Well, this is David Tulis, and we are here at 800-8949, 800-8949. And do let me know what you think. What I suggest you do is do what I've done, okay? Let us have a little bit of democratization of science, right? Science is not simply reserved for people who have doctorates and double master's degrees and went to Georgia Tech, right? Science is something that we all take part in every day. And we use perhaps the most important scientific instrument, and that is the eyeball of which you have two. is a vital instrument in science, and every scientist has them, except maybe one or two might have an eye patch. You may have just one, but you have two eyes, and it's important to look at the videos of the two towers going down. It's worth your time, I think, to look at the videos showing the 50 floor World Trade Center 7 going down as well. There are several versions of that, and they all say the same thing. They suggest, all of them, that these buildings came down on purpose, and that they did not come down simply by the explosion of jet fuel, which is something like kerosene, which burns at about 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Steel melts at 2,500 degrees. Jet fuel burns. Well, I'm getting in my notes here. I have conflicting numbers on the fire, the heat of jet fuel. Let's just say it's 1,800 degrees. Jet fuel burns, and how can an explosion, two explosions of that, ostensibly of jets, burn the main structures of two fabulous buildings that are tokens of American capitalism, right? Tokens of American hegemony around the world, of its great trading authority, right? There are world trade centers. The world is traded there, in the abstract and in the physical as well. Many banking houses, many financial houses were in those towers. How can we not use our eyes to determine for ourselves what happened? Well, just ask yourself some of these questions. If you think the story is worth believing as told, let me just ask you just to look at some of the videos. Go for example to a very fine presentation. It's kind of a movie, about an hour-long movie from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and that is ae911truth.org. That's ae911truth.org. These are the 2,900 signatories to this demand for a reinvestigation of 9/11. We had an investigation that was a whitewash of these events. These were not criminal investigations as NIST requires. These were simply writing away. Also, again, this is part of why it's such a successful story, such a successful government intervention. You might say as against the people, but let's just be gracious and say that this was an intervention for the people. Because 9/11 happened, we now have the Department of Homeland Security. We now have the Patriot Act renewed with the favor of Chuck Fleischman. The 9/11 Commission report of 2009 omits World Trade Center 7 entirely, and the writers of these reports did not ask the question about the presence of explosives or accelerants in the demolition of these buildings. What I want you to look at and think about is the picture of World Trade Center 1 or 2 coming out. Look at how it develops, and we're told the main explanation is, well, that the collapse of the top 15 stories caused a pancake reaction, and all the floors collapsed beneath the rising weight of the floors above, accelerating as the whole pile goes down. Well, that is simply ludicrous, because it forgets one of the main points of physics, and that is that if there is a pressure point against one thing or the other, there's a counter pressure back. If there are 100 floors beneath a pile of 80 floors beneath a pile of falling debris, that 80th floor is going to resist the fall of all the floors above it. The videos all show just the opposite happening. The videos show in excruciating detail, and many of them showing analyses of observers showing odd phenomenon. These floors crashed down free fall, as if there were no resistance. And if you look closely, you can see in some of them the burn line, you might say the crash line, as the explosions go down floor by floor. If you look kind of under the growing pile of debris, which is overhead, the crash line is going down. I saw one glimpse in one of the 9/11 scenes this morning at the engineer's website, how the explosion line is going faster than the free-falling debris cloud that is pouring out from around the top in a mushroom form, as it were, under the the mushroom head, you could say, along the neck, if you will, there are these explosions going down the sides of the buildings. And those are explosions. Those are not collapsing signs. Those are active. That's an active demolition field going down along the sides of these buildings. So that is evidence number one that your eyes should take in. Have your eyes take those things in, and ask yourself: did this building collapse because of fire on floors high above? I mean, these are dozens and dozens of floors above, and we have a building collapse below, which is unaffected by the crash of the jet, assuming there's a jet, unaffected by the crash of that jet and the explosion of fuel that burns 1,000 degrees below, or maybe 800 degrees below the melting level of steel. There are thousands of girders in all these buildings, thousands of rods and joists and beams, all in steel, and they all collapse together. If you look at the scenes from World Trade Center 7, you see something likewise. In 7 seconds, that building of about 50 stories is flat on the ground. It falls on its own footprint. Did you know about that? Did you know that there was a third building that went down, containing many important government offices, CIA office, and the New York Emergency Command Center was also in that building, which went down, we're told, by office fires. Office fires brought that building down. And again, it's not possible for the burning of carpets and desks and the like to create such an inferno of such heat as to melt all these girders all at the same time. Even if there were, ask yourself, even if there were area fires and certain parts of the building buckled, why would the whole thing fall all at once after the main two towers had been demolished? Why would they fall all at once? If you look at one video, it shows that that just before the collapse of World Trade Center 7, there are innumerable windows which suddenly break out, and coming from some of them, dust spumes, and then the building just slides down. Is it pulverized as it goes down? In fact, one analyst, Dr. Judy Wood, who has a controversial theory about what happened, points out that the collapse of World Trade Center 7 did not even show up on readings of the ground that would measure an earthquake, that would measure an explosion, that would measure the fall of a real building. Didn't show up. So in other words, what happened was there was such a thorough demolition of this building and its parts that when they all hit the ground, it was pulverized. It was pulverized, and you might say landed softly into the ground. Well, this is David Tulis, and I'm raising these questions because I want you to have a thankful heart. Have a thankful heart that we don't have to worry about these details because we have the official analysis, and that is that Muslim terrorists did it. And so what we need to do is we need to hate Muslims, right? We need to hate people in Iraq and Afghanistan and blame them. Blame Osama bin Laden, a former CIA asset, for coming up with this scheme. Are they lying to us? Are the good people lying to us? Have they used 9/11 as a pretext for war? Yes, they have. Have they used 9/11 as a pretext for the police state that we really need to keep us safe? Well, they have. And I wonder, are we better off for it? Should we be thankful, as I'm suggesting, or might we not actually be a little angry that things have happened in the past 16 years as they have suggested? We've had 6,000 American soldiers killed in warfare, and probably about 2 million Muslims have been killed as a result of our wars of invasion in the Middle East. And we have created, by our presence there, we have created the terrorism cause, right? The cause of terrorism arises from the grievance, the religious grievance of these Muslim activists against us. We have made ourselves the convenient target in our invasions, in our occupations, in our business ventures around the world. We have made ourselves a target. Now, what does this have to do with local economy and the free market? I suggest that we be skeptical of Washington, that we be skeptical of its good intentions, and that we be skeptical of whatever it tells us. It may say we have a strong economy. President Trump is saying FEMA's done a terrific job, terrific job. Well, has it really? Can we believe President Trump, who is a magnate in the New York real estate market, and I'm sure no doubt knows what happened? He certainly heard what was happening. Harry Silverstein, his competitor, was at the center of the financial dealings with these towers and profited in a payout, an insurance payout of more than $4 billion with a minimal investment of under $100 million. According to one the Corbett report analysis, $4.55 billion settlement in 2007. This is David Tulis, and there's more to it than we think. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader.